Thank you, Mark. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I appreciate it, and want to thank you for knowing you all these many years and studying with you so many times over those years. As you mentioned, I've been involved with the Institute for a very long time. I served 14 years on a 6-year term on the board, and rolled off yesterday, and there's apparently something else that I get to do in the director circle. But the Institute has been very important, critically important to the development of my spiritual life over the last, I don't know, 17 or 18 years when I first got involved in it. Rachel, of blessed memory, was still the director. What I want to do today is talk about Yom Kippur, which is going to strike you as a little bit odd because it is June. It's not the fall. And in fact, some weeks ago, we read Achrei Mot, which is the parsha that describes the service of the high priest on the high holidays. But I have been participating with the hundreds of thousands of other Jews around the world in reading Daf Yomi, which is to read a page of Talmud a day. It's a 7.5-year cycle. And this month, we are reading Yoma, which is the description, the detailed instructions on how to conduct Yom Kippur to the high priest. And today is page 73 of Yoma. I think we're finally getting close to the end. And having read this text for the last several months, I'm really struck by a number of things. Now, one, of course, is some of the instructions in the text in the Talmud are fascinating. Gives you a hint of how the Talmudists were thinking. Since the high priest needed to be asking forgiveness for himself, for his family, and for all the people of Israel, there had to be a backup wife available should his wife die before Yom Kippur. There needed to be backup goats should the goats die before Yom Kippur. And there's a lot of discussion about if one goat dies, do you replace both goats or just one goat? There's discussion about how to conduct the lottery for which goat is sacrificed on the altar and which goat is sent off to Azazel, and a lengthy discussion of how they actually track the goat through the wilderness. You probably didn't know that, but the goat is watched as it goes to the edge of the cliff. The goat that goes off to Azazel does not make it either, just spoiler alert. An excruciating detail on the sacrifices. That was not comfortable for my vegan friend in our weekly study group. They talked about how to walk around the altar. It was the early, the early prejudice against left-handers. So you always walk around the altar from right to left. But the thing that struck me most about all of these instructions was that, and the Talmud repeated over and over again, if one thing was not done right, with the right intention, it was as if nothing was done at all. There was no way to just do these things half-heartedly. What the Talmud teaches is extreme precision, and it taught extreme precision because the fate of Israel depended upon it. The high priest was asking for forgiveness for himself, for his family, and for all of us. And that was a very serious business. Now, we don't perform the service of the high priest. We don't have a temple. The closest we come to it is we tell the story once a year when we read Achrei Mot, and then we tell it again on the high holidays. But what I'm learning from Talmud, from Yoma, and from the other tractates is both how important the details are of what we're being asked to do, and how important the kavanah is in doing them. Now, there are those ultra observant people who believe that every single act that they perform is important to the fate of humanity and to bring the Messiah closer to us. Every single mitzvah, every single breath we take. Now, I don't hold to that broad implication, but I do wonder, what are the implications for our spiritual life today of the kind of instructions we read in the Talmud for what we need to do? And so when I thought about that, I thought about one of my one of my teachers, John Kabat-Zinn, who created the Center for the mindfulness-based stress reduction. And John always said that before every sit that I ever had the opportunity to sit with him, he would say, sit as if your life depends upon it, because it does. Now, I've been hearing John say this and offer this Torah for many years, and I've not really fully unpacked it. I'm not sure that I've unpacked it at all, but I do know that it is important that I need to take my sitting seriously, that it is not a casual act that I do. It's not just getting a bagel or having a cup of coffee. So as I thought about what the Talmud says and what John said, I wonder, what if all of our spiritual practices were truly important? What if what we did in our sit and on our practice affected not just us, but the world? So what I take from that is that I should be sitting as if it were truly important. And just as the rabbis of the Talmud had an extremely long list of instructions for what they needed to do to prepare to ask for forgiveness for the Jewish people, we have all developed over the years, months, weeks, days, maybe hours, maybe someone is sitting here for the first time. We have all developed our own routines as we approach meditation. You may have a particular place to sit in your house. You may have a particular time of the day that you sit. Your daily practice may be at 12:30 every day with this group. It may be alone by yourself when you sit up in bed in the morning. You've probably figured out what the most comfortable position for you is as you sit. You've probably thought about what kavanah you want to bring to the sit. Am I going to focus on my breath today? Am I going to focus on my body? Am I going to focus on thoughts, emotions? Whatever it is, we have all developed over time those of us that have a serious practice, and I include all of us on this call in that because you're on this call, we've all developed an approach to our meditation. And we all take it seriously because it's an important part of our spiritual life. So I don't need to tell you how to meditate. All I can do is encourage you, as John did, to sit as if your life depends upon it. Because it does. So I'll ring the bell, and
I'm not sure I understand.
Siri does not understand. So let's just take a few conscious deep breaths. Settling into your place, in your way, preparing to sit. Thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Larry, for reminding us of the importance, the significance of our practice. Friends, we seal the practice, as we always do, with an opportunity for those of us who are mourning or observing a yard site to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. And those of you who would like are welcome to add the name or names of those you're holding in your heart today in the chat box. And thanks to Adi for sharing the words of Kaddish on the screen, inviting you to rise and join me to recite the words of Kaddish. Yid Gadal, Yid Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Divra Chidutei, V'amlich Malchutei, Chayechon, V'yomechon, Uchaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'zman Karev, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Le'olam U'ameh Amaya. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'al, Yitramam, V'yitnaseh. Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemei Dechusha, Berichut, La'ela, Minkol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechamata, La'amiran Ba'alma, V'imru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmama Rabbanan Shemaya, L'chaim Aleinu B'Yalkut Yisrael, V'imru, Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom V'Roma, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu B'Yalkut Yisrael, B'Yalkut Yoshvei Teva, V'imru.
Amen.
Friends, thanks for joining us today. You're welcome to stay on, as always, for some conversation with our teacher for today, Larry Yermack, about our practice and about Larry's beautiful teaching. And I want to thank Adi Stein, as always, before we end officially, for holding this space with devotion, with dedication, with consistent grace and skill, and the kind of thing that can easily go unnoticed. But much gratitude to you, Adi, for holding the space. And reminder that we'll be back tomorrow. For those of you who are leaving us, we have another wonderful new to our rotation meditation teacher, Rebecca Schisler, will be joining us from Israel tomorrow. Looking forward to practicing with her, and hope you'll join us then on Thursday for our Thursday set. For those who have questions or comments about the teaching today or about the practice today, you're welcome to put them in the chat box and preface them. And by the way, I want to put in the chat box for those who are not able to join us on Monday night for our evening of gratitude. I'm going to put the link to the recording there. That's the full almost hour session, and also some original incredible original music was shared as part of the program as well, which is in that recording. If you want to just hear the song, that's the link on the YouTube. Spread that around. It's will do everybody some good. So Larry, I really appreciated that. First, I'd like to recap what I heard this teaching was, make sure I got it, make sure I received it correctly. And what I heard was what you're getting from this study, from this Talmud study, and in particular around Yom Kippur, is the rabbi's incredible curiosity and attention to detail and about the significance of detail, right? That everything matters. Nothing is trivial. Nothing is mundane. It's a particular way of looking at the world that sees everything as significant. To some minds that can look like, and it can, of course, become, obsessive involvement with what may seem like trivial detail. But on the positive, that's a positive way of framing it, I would say. Yeah, fair enough.
It is fair. And the thing that has struck me over the last year and a half is how much of the Talmud is dedicated to the temple and doing things right at the temple, when by the time the Talmud was codified, the temple was gone for 400 years. And not only was there no prospect of being restored, the rabbis did not want to bring it back. So what could this mean other than, you know, is it Torah for its own sake?
Well, I mean, the fact that it is focused on the temple, I'm taking as indicative of the connection between what we're doing here today and avodah, or sacred service, right? This is not just, I mean, you're trained both in this kind of secular mindfulness meditation of MBSR, right? Mindfulness-based stress reduction.
I do have that background as well, yes.
Right. And as well as approaching this from a spiritual perspective. So I'm actually be interested to hear you say a little bit about what you see as the distinction between those two, if any, because of course mindfulness is you know, all the rage these days. We see it everywhere. But in this particular context, we're approaching it as a Jewish spiritual practice, not as a way to calm down or just to deal with stress, but as a spiritual practice, as avodah, almost as a prayer-like experience. And so I'd be interested to hear, just putting that here for a second. But I had another question I wanted to ask you first. If we take your premise that everything is that we need to pay attention to the details, that we need to sweat the details in order to remember that everything really matters, and what we're doing right now is important, has weight, is significant, ultimate significance. It affects everything. That's on the one hand. So what I'm wondering about is, to the extent to which that can feed perfectionism, or a feeling of, you know, like, oh my, that's a heavy weight to carry, right? That what I'm doing right now, the world depends on what I'm doing right now. Because what happens when I start thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner tonight? You know, I'm letting down the whole world. I'm letting down God. I'm just speaking personally here. So how do you temper that with compassion and chesed?
I can't just say yes, can I?
You can. You sure you can. Sure you can. But
No,
I just think it's worth bringing that in.
I've always
Maybe that's a
been,
segue too to that other question about, you know, MBSR and, you know, Jewish spirituality as mindfulness meditation.
well, the other question is a lot easier for me, because what I take from MBSR,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't always see in Jewish meditation, is an attention to the act of meditating.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I've heard many wonderful teachers over the years offer great teachings and then say, okay, well, now it's time to sit.
Right.
And that's great. But in MBSR, I learned about how to sit, how to instruct people in sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's MBSR has obviously stolen all of their stuff from Buddhism, which
Mm-hmm.
also has spent thousands of years studying meditation and deals
Mm-hmm.
with obstacles for sitting, problems that arise while you're sitting, all the issues, you know, all the tachlis issues about what it takes to be a meditator that we have to pay attention to, because when we do this, we're going to have problems. It's not going to be easy. All sorts of stuff is going to come up, and we have to learn how to deal with them so that we can, in fact, return to the sitting. Otherwise, you know, our mind would take us away, and we would never be able to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I am struck. But the second part of your question has always struck me, and I've had this discussion with many friends about, you know, in the secular Jewish world, there is a fair amount of scorn, if not contempt, for the Haredim.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just ridiculous what they believe and what they
Mm-hmm.
do. And I understand that from my friends, but I also wonder if you really truly believe that everything you do counts. It produces for me, it generates in me a certain amount of compassion for the ultra orthodox that I didn't know was there.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about the fact that there are people that go through this world believing that every single one of their actions affects the fate of humanity, and the fate of humanity and the fate of the world.
Right.
I can't live with that. I agree with you. I can't live with that. I mean, it would make me completely crazy. but that's not the world that I came from, and it's not the world that I ever entered. I grew up in a secular world, and for me, I came to mindfulness and practice from there. So I don't see myself ever going all the way.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, maybe I guess this to me, it's a helpful conversation. I guess that's the way I'm thinking, maybe to frame it, is that, we start off by thinking about the Jewish spiritual principles that come into Jewish mindfulness meditation, which part of what I think informs it as a Jewish spiritual practice for me is, first of all, this idea of kavanah, of setting an intention, the inevitability of straying from the intention, and then catching oneself in the straying, where the moving off the intention, and then tshuva, coming back to the intention. And that, so the pair there, so the kavanah is exactly what you're saying, is that my kavanah is, I want to wake up to the fact that life is happening right now. And I am alive, and I'm part of this world, and I'm here, I'm here to do business. I'm here to really be as fully alive as I can be right now, and not fritter it away, not take it lightly, right? That's my intention. I'd like to be that way. At the same time, I read the box scores. I do a lot of things that, I might say, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to not reading the box scores. Yeah, I've got plenty of help with the perfectionism issue. Thank you. Just like, I'm imagining that others might. That's why I'm just sharing. So that it has that's the kavanah. And then I will move away. And the compassion is not just for when I catch myself drifting away, but the compassion that it's not just a compassion that, oh, you got to get back, I'm going to get back to my intention. It's that actually, where I have gone might be where I need to go. It's not like, what's the matter with you? You're supposed to be paying attention to the breath or the sensation or this or that, right? But, like someone mentioned, well, if you're thinking about what to make for dinner, that's grist for the mill as well, right? That's like, food, desire, family, connection. Maybe that now is, So anyway, I'm just throwing that out. I'd be interested in your thoughts about that. But I think that's what I think about as a spiritual practice, is that there is a paradox, for me at least, this paradox of the striving for cultivating that kind of awareness, and recognizing that focus and complete attentiveness to the moment is really impossible 100% of the time. I don't know. What do you think? Where does compassion come in MBSR? Does it?
I don't know.
I hope Siri is listening to this, by the way. I hope Siri will come to some understanding of what we're talking about.
I don't know. I haven't studied with John or the MBSR for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I've been living in the IJS world for the last
Okay.
year.
All right. Let's stay here. Let's stay in our IJS world.
Let's stay here.
Yeah. I think we're all, none of all, but many of us are recovering perfectionists. And so I think we find a lot of comfort in remembering compassion in some way.
And we know.
So what do you, go ahead, Larry.
Well, I'm saying, I know that we call it practice.
Mm-hmm.
That no, but when I go on retreat, when you go on retreat, you never expect to live a retreat life when you're in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Jeff Roth once at a retreat saying that, I hope I'm not ratting Jeff out, but he said it publicly. He said that in his career, in his life as a meditator, he had one 20-minute stretch when he didn't have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was amazing, that he actually had 20 minutes when he was able to follow his breath consistently without being distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy if I go 3 breaths without a distracting thought. And if I'm on retreat, I might go 4 or 5. But during the day, not so much.
Yeah. I guess I'm wondering whether, so I don't know if we're aiming necessarily even at the absence of thought, but what we're aiming at is being awake. Like, like just being awake that, oh, I am having a thought. Oh, this is that thought, right? And so if we redefine awareness, if we redefine what you were talking about as attention to everything and bringing curious, kind attention to everything that's coming up as like that grist for the mill, that is then we are doing it. Then we're doing exactly, we're being like the rabbis. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Haredim, because for people who don't know, that word Haredim literally means tremblers, people who tremble, right? People who have a sense of awe, really, which is another word I might associate with what sounds like you were describing, like to treat life with reverence, to have a sense of reverence, to have a sense of awe, to have a sense that this matters, and not to take it lightly, not to take things lightly. But maybe that's another paradox, actually, is that at the same time that we take things, everything is heavy, with everything is weighty, we learn to take it or carry it lightly too, right? Because if we only take it as weighty, then it's heavy. It's kind of heavy, So just take a quick look. I'm taking a quick look to see if there are any questions that came in.
Well, there were a lot of wonderful comments.
Mm-hmm. How to be an observant Jew without being an obsessive compulsive Jew? That is a good question. Yeah.
I don't think it's what we focus on, it's our awareness of focusing that what's important. And it's the difference between noticing what's happening and being completely caught up in what's happening and not noticing it at all.
This is great from Beverly. The Talmud seems to approach life as art. An artist must, as Nabokov said, caress the details. That's a great phrase, actually, for this. The idea of caressing the details, of really paying close attention to the details. But I love that caress as a way of kind of bringing gentleness and the kindness and the love into that as well, which sometimes is missing in the Haredi world, right? In all worlds, not just the Haredi world, but sometimes I think that can be, the sense of harshness can be off-putting for some. And one other, just to close, this is from Mark Williams. This is great. My oldest son once said when he was in his early teens, in a way, because nothing matters, everything matters. Paradox.
Which is a corollary to my favorite quote from the Harry Bosch, the Connolly police procedurals with Harry Bosch.
Don't know it. Bring it on.
Everybody counts or nobody counts.
Oh, that's good too. That's great. That's great. All right, Larry. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. And I think people really did appreciate, having that extended time for stillness and silence. So thank you for that gift today, as well as for the reminder about treating life and everything with care and love, and with that, caressing the details of life. I'm going to take that into the rest of the day. I hope people will as well. And I hope everybody can join us tomorrow to practice with Rebecca Schisler, who'll be joining us as our teacher for the first time tomorrow. So please join us to welcome Rebecca as a teacher. Be well, Larry. Best to you. Best to everyone. Many blessings.